telepathy is just a subset of that, where you're picking a person or a collective of people who are on the same frequency to open up a channel to. And then the thoughts are the same. You're sharing thought. You're not creating the thoughts. The thoughts exist. You're tuning to the thoughts, and then you share thoughts in the non-physical realm. That's essentially, to me, what telepathy is. So the work I do in the Exploring Telepathy calls, and as private clients as well, is about just chilling out and how do we get up into that range. And then channeling and connecting is a lot easier when you can do that part. So I do this part mostly.
Okay.
Get them up there.
Who knows if they stay up there? They'll come. But you're teaching them how, right? Yes.
Well, yeah, I help, and I help them through guided meditations and so forth. But the thing is that once you've tasted that, like once somebody wants to truly get into a full-blown channeling state, there's this immense flood of love which goes through the body, which brings people to tears sometimes.
Hi, Conscious Parents, it's Carrie here, and I am here with a little info about raising our mindful kids. I've got some tips and tricks about breaking free of the box and becoming who you are and teaching your kids how to do that along the way. Join us.
There, and welcome back. I'm your intuitive mama, Carrie here, and I'm so excited to introduce a guest that I've connected with, Mr. Kevin Young. He's an intuitive coach, a healing facilitator. He's in a telepathy group that I am in on Facebook, and he's one of the administrators. It's been really powerful to connect with Kevin. Thanks so much for being here today and joining us.
It's my honor, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
So I'm hearing these kids, they're being born with these intensities, and it's not just like in the autism. I feel like a whole neurodiverse realm are coming, and some of the kids even classified as, there's kids as highly sensitive children too. Maybe they don't have official labels or anything. They have so many amazing strengths, but also coming with some challenges too. Challenges like the apraxia, not being able to speak because of the physical pieces of it. Brains are so intense and so active that oftentimes it can be easy to end up with anxiety or nervousness, or these heightened senses can make it so that being in the body can feel so hard. So helping on this mission to try to help parents understand that, yes, it can be really, really challenging raising these kids sometimes, but we also need to help them stay connected so they can stay conscious into adulthood. That's what I keep hearing.
Sure. And how interesting that applies to neurotypical children too.
Yes.
It's helping them to stay in alignment and guidance. I've had our granddaughter, my wife's granddaughter, she's got 4 kids and a bunch of grandkids. And I are like when your son came in. We were there when she was born, and I held her on my chest that day. And it was like, and she's 5 now, but I had that energy of like, oh, I know I'm supposed to be in your life, and you're in mine for a reason. There's a healing part of me that needs to happen. And there's going to be some healing you're going to need because of the environment. And I had the same thing with my own daughter 37 years ago, but I knew nothing 37 years ago. I was in a little box of fear and worry, and so I couldn't see the gift. But now in this environment, I have that, like watching her grow and being part of, it's every so often. We don't have her very often, but there's just that connection that happens again. And I watch part of that pure soul starting to be muted, as it does as the human brain takes over and they adapt the fears and the beliefs of the surrounding environment. And so my role is to help her stay, as you just said, kind of come back to that role of self-guidance and fun and joy. And we can, we bake things together sometimes, and, we can make a mess. And we're here to enjoy the moment and not accomplish a goal. And so it's taught me that I've got to be even more present than her. I didn't realize how not present I was a lot of the time when she would show up and suddenly she'd get angry. She'd start attacking almost. She does this to her mom all the time, used to. She'd bite her when she was 2 or 3. And I realized that she wants to be up here. But the environment that she happened to be in that moment was trying to pull her down into fear or worry or stress. And so the next step up, if you become familiar with the Abraham emotional scale, they talk about the emotional range. And when you're down at the bottom in fear and powerlessness and grief and guilt, you want to do everything you can to get out of there. But most of us are numb to it, so we stay there. But kids aren't numb yet. So they want to go up through a range, which is anger and rage and revenge even. That is the path out of powerlessness and then back up to optimism, hope, and joy. And so these kids, when they act out, and I watched this in the neurodiverse kids as well, the head banging and screaming and so forth, it's the same thing. They're being pulled down much farther than they want to go by the environment. It's just influence. There's no blame. It's not somebody's fault that they're that way. We're doing the best we can. Sometimes it's a negative environment, but as you said, they're so sensitive. It's like pins and needles, it's like torture to them. And so they move up into the rage, which is about as far as they can go to get some sort of breath of fresh air away from the powerless energy that they're around. And so when my granddaughter does that, we've got a little game. I've got a punching bag or like a sandbag and some baseball bats in the basement that I used to use for clients who would come over to move through this. And she knows, she said, I want to go downstairs, and she'll grab one of the bats and she'll start swinging it just for like 10 seconds. See, because she corrects like that. She knows how to let go because she's familiar with that high frequency. It hasn't been numbed out of her yet. But if she starts doing that to me, like if she'll start suddenly, I'll look at myself. I say, okay, I am tired and I'm letting my emotions kind of drop. Maybe I'm feeling a little more powerless than I thought I was. I didn't even recognize it. I'm just used to, I get tired. I let my emotions drop. And she's telling me by her reaction to me that I don't want you down here, Grandpa. I want you to be back up in the play energy. And so it's my job then, if I can get back there, if I realize, I just let it go, let's get back up to the fun and light and loving energy. Or I said, Grandpa's going to go take a rest and you're going to play with Grandma for a while.
Yep.
But either way, the whole lesson is so powerful. And I'm watching as parents are struggling with these kids. And I want to be able to share this information, that it is about the environment. That's what they're here to teach us. You're supposed to be sensitive to how you feel. You're not supposed to be down there in the muck of fear and powerlessness and grief and guilt and shame for any length of time. It's not good for you. You'll attract things down in that environment. And the kids they can't be corrected. That's why they're on a spectrum and not one thing. You can't give them one pill or one operation. They came on a spectrum so that we can't we're trying to assign a problem with a virus or this or that and the other thing. Sorry, they're going to keep coming in because we have stuff to learn here.
Yes.
And there's nothing that a human can do about that because this is part of our collective unfolding. We're all going to be more autistic at some point.
Yes. I don't know if you've ever read or heard any of Dolores Cannon, like some of the Indigo Child pieces and the Star Seeds and all of that. It's really interesting. When I was looking back at it, they mentioned that I think they started seeing a first wave of indigo children around I want to say it was the late 50s, early 60s was the first round. And then I was reading at one point that, there's like the indigo, crystal, rainbow, there's several different eras and rounds, that each round that came was stronger each time because the first round couldn't do their mission that they were wanting. They had so much resistance.
Yes.
So then the next round had to be stronger. And I feel like that with my husband and I, where we have that heightened sensitivity. We're both very gifted and talented and also have a hard time with attention sometimes ourselves because we are so connected. I used to always hear my mom say focus, we need to focus. And it was because I was all the time. Even when I'm driving, I'm like, I need to focus. So it was like this era that my husband and I came in the 80s. And then I think we were preparing to welcome in this next era that's coming now. And they're so much louder and stronger and more connected.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I completely agree. And as you said, it can only be done to the increment that society is ready to awaken. And really, it's why COVID came along. It's why the current political situation is here, is we need disruption. We need those fears pushed in our face to where we'll start to look within. Why am I being triggered? Why do I have a belief system that is holding me down? It doesn't matter where you got it. It comes from childhood, so what, right? What matters is the now moment. What are you being triggered about? And what are you going to do about it? Because it's not somebody else's fault that they pushed your button. It's your button hanging out there. Right? And you want to have power. You want to take control of that again and find ways to become vibrationally impervious. I've had this in a number of channeling sessions over the years because I'm thinking, I want to reach more people. I want to be more helpful. And they said, well, guess what? Some of the people who show up are going to not be so kind. You want to reach 1 million people. You're not going to get 1 million,
Yeah.
loving supporters,
Accepting.
right? Yeah, ain't going to happen. And because I'm still not as solid as I want to be. And so all of last year, I had an illness and a bunch of things where it was sort of that tearing apart of really facing some of the real self-hatred, self-loathing energies that I had all the way back to, young childhood. And now, of course, I was ready for this piece. I can feel the next piece is going to be, I can already feel the resistance I have and the beliefs I've got to work through. And I'm having a session tomorrow with one of the people actually in the group who's a long distance medical intuitive, healing intuitive, who has done really wonderful work with my wife in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to see her, and she just showed up from this group. So again, breadcrumbs, if you just let the thing that lights up and you just go in that direction and try not to let the brain judge. And the answer is that we're here to be supported and to move forward. So I love that you and me and these groups we're out here on this leading edge where it's scary and the unknown, but when you know that you're source energy, you know that you're eternal, nothing can happen. The body's going to come and go. We've been in lots of bodies, right? There's nothing going wrong. And just chill out and align and start practicing this. And then we become the example for others. We fill the cup up, we overflow to others, we radiate it, but we don't fall into their negative energy.
Yes.
We maintain, that's the difference between compassion and empathy. Empathy goes into the negative frequency, which doesn't help anybody. Compassion stays connected to source, sends them love and helps where they can if they're asking for help, and helping them in the way that helps them be self-empowered, not doing it for them unless there's no choice, but rather helping them work through their struggles so that they can come into alignment with themselves and be self-empowered, and so on and so on and so on.
I love the way you mention that we're learning from them and they're learning from, it's like an energetic exchange almost. And I feel like energetically in our house, for example, the other night, we've been suffering illness here and there, and my husband was tired and he was trying to brush my daughter's teeth and she was very emotional. And so he was getting frustrated and she was picking up his frustration and reflecting it back at him. And it was just this, this thing, it was ramping up. I'm like, okay, hang on. Dad's going to go wash the dishes for a second. Let me sit and chat with you. And I went in there with this calm, loving energy. And she came down, from her heightened state and she started to reflect that calm, loving energy. I was able to brush her teeth. And I was trying to show my husband later on, like, she's reflecting what she's picking up from you. Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And when you can see that everything is a reflection, we are creating the reality we're living by what we're sending out. Everything, everyone, every experience, every event, every circumstance is always a reflection at the level that we're sending out in the moment. And there's no judgment. It's just a reflective mirror 360 all the way around us. And when you can see the reflection, when you're not feeling good and you're seeing something that doesn't feel good, that's because that's what you've been doing, usually subconsciously, for long enough to where the momentum build up to that you got the reflection.
Interesting. Yes, that's really interesting. I think as parents too, in this, going through this, you mentioned like the reflection on ourselves of things that we need to heal. And I'm trying to take on 2025 as my year for acknowledging challenges as moments to learn, heal, and grow in. What would you say about that for parents?
Well, there's never a time not to be doing that.
For everyone, not just parents.
Yeah, but there are reasons for challenges. We wouldn't have collectively created a limited third-dimensional reality, separation and lack and limitation, if there wasn't some massive benefit to the broader consciousness. So everything has purpose. And so the purpose of channeling our immense consciousness down into only 3 dimensions and in this little body is because it provides a lot more variety from which to choose. You get a lot more negative extremes, and there's a lot more range to go positive. And so the point of existence is to seek joy through expansion of our own soul, the things that are important to us. But you can't do that without having choices. Yeah. Discernment is everything. And so we, as a society, we we're really hard on each other and ourselves when we do something wrong or we make a mistake. But there's no mistakes. I'm just steering the ship in another direction. Oh, I hit the rocks over here. Okay, well then that's not the direction. Okay, well what does that tell me? This is the direction over here instead. So now I go in that direction for a bit, and hey, there's some more rocks. But now I know about hitting rocks. Okay, so now I can steer. So nothing's going wrong. It's just we make it as soon as we judge it going wrong, then now we're pulling our own energy down and we're heading towards the rocks. Everything's about chilling out and lightening up and just enjoying the ride and not making anything wrong or bad. And in the moment of letting go of the judgment, which is usually self-judgment, then we lighten up, and now we're sending out that energy and it's reflected back, just as you did with your child. You intentionally know a way to do this, Carrie. Right? You probably got lots of techniques how you can settle that energy and become super present. And the reflection, as you said, showed her how to do it. It was your daughter, right? You said? Or your son? Your daughter, yeah. And it also kind of amplifies within you, this is what works. This is how it works. And you can create any environment by that same process. It's just coming into alignment, letting the brain off the hook, and just starting to trust the broader consciousness flowing through us through streams of positive impulses.
Wow. I feel like when my kids are in these emotional states, watching, I can feel like their spirit is wanting to leave, and I'm trying to keep them in their body. With your granddaughter, it sounds like you guys get in a physical state, right? Hitting a beanbag.
Well, sometimes, yeah. Oh, well, it's whatever.
It depends. It depends.
It depends, and that's a matter for the child to choose. It's one of the things that we don't do as a society very well. We got this school system, kindergarten through 12, in the U.S. And it's all about telling the children, here's how you're supposed to be. Here's what you're supposed to learn. Here's how you're supposed to learn it. Here's when you're supposed to learn it. Don't you dare make a decision that feels good to you, because we will give you a bad grade, and then we'll put it on your card and we'll give it to your... Anyways, I'm kind of exaggerating, but it's not that far off. And then we get into society, governments and religions and businesses, and there's a very similar kind of paradigm. Your own guidance isn't good enough for you. We've been around on this earth longer, a few decades longer than you, so we know it's better for you. And this is why they are rebelling. They either rebel and become, when they're about 2 or 3 years old, they start to get that personality.
Yeah.
Well, let's just squash that quickly before it gets out of control. And what that does is it says your own inner guidance, your divine, broader self isn't important enough. Our control is more important. And why would anybody try to control another? Because they're in fear themselves. Control is about fear. And so it's one of the things that I listened to the Abraham Hicks materials. That's what started when I had the brain tumor in 2008. That's where my journey started. Was we got Abraham Hicks CDs like the same week that I was diagnosed. So suddenly my journey opened up then. And that's one of the things they talk about is, you got to keep your kids alive. That's your primary job. But beyond that, beyond keeping them alive, your job is to help them discern and define their own path. And this includes learning. No kid's going to go into 5, 6, 7, 8 years old and not want to learn how to read or write if their friends are doing it. They will learn because they want to be with their friends. They want to connect. They want to learn the things that they want to learn. But it's the forcedness is what pulls them out of alignment. And then, again, we're training them away from the one thing that not only is going to keep them alive, but it's going to bring them joy and allow them to express themselves. So to me, it ends up, whether they're neurodiverse or not, to me, it's the same path. What is it that you're being called to do that somehow the environment's not letting you do? Let's see if we can help you to do what you're being called to do in this now moment, because it could change 5 minutes from now. We'll do our best within the context of the family and, what other things are going on. What I found with the granddaughter is that I only have to do that a little bit with her. She's so used to being so many activities, and here's how you got to do this and that. And it doesn't take very much long, and suddenly she just all the energy comes down, and she gets into creative, playful mode because she's not pushing against. She's not trying to find her way out of the box, which society's kind of starting to put her in. I just let her, because I don't have a job. I do this kind of stuff, but the rest of my time's free, and we can go to the park, we can play in the backyard, we can bake things.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's, again, this is kind of an extreme way of seeing it, but it applies pretty much everywhere. And the neurodiverse are here to just put a big, huge spotlight on it. You can't suppress us without there being a violent reaction, because we're not going to be numbed the way the neurotypical kids are. We can't be.
Have you heard of pathological demand avoidance? It's under autism.
I
It's
have
a
not
newer
heard that
one.
term.
I think it came from England. I don't know if many professional psychologists are using it, but they're putting it under autism now. And it's so interesting because it's basically, and I might be not totally right because this is not my expertise, but the more demands we're putting on the system, the more they want to fight against it or rebel against it. Or if there's too many demands, they can shut down or they can push against it. And it's been so interesting because along our parenting journey, we would have people say, you have to do it this certain way, you have to do it this certain way, or, these expertise that we would go to for help. And if we really crack down or put something like, you're in timeout, you have to stay in this one spot, my son would just rage, no, you're not going to. So it's just interesting that we're now labeling it.
We got to do something because the obvious thing is they're not ready
So
for
many. We're not ready. So it's really interesting because allowing them to be themselves, but I think there's I don't know if you've read any of, I think it's Dr. Lisa Miller, I'm gonna have to double check, is The Spirited Child and Spirituality.
Susie Miller, maybe?
Susie Miller. No,
Yeah.
no, not Susie Miller. It's a psychologist at I have to look it up. I'm going to look it up for you because she has a lot of research on raising kids spiritually and how spirituality helps them in all areas of development when they're spiritually connected. And it's really cool. So she's a clinical research psychologist.
Nice.
So I'll have to send you the book. It's not Susie Miller. I know who that is from Telepathic Tapes as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So she was saying children are born conscious, as we've been talking about, and then teaching them the tools to remain conscious, as we're talking about as well. And it's what I'm finding with my kids is they can come back to being conscious so much easier, as you're describing, than adults can, right? Because they're not, I haven't looked at these levels. I love this emotional scale, Abraham. Is that Abraham Hicks emotional scale?
Well, Abraham is the collective consciousness that
Yes.
Mr. Hicks channels.
Yeah.
I'll send you the emotional scale.
Okay, I would love to share that for everyone because that's really interesting to think about. And I describe it as children as we're coming along, or what happened with myself, being such a highly sensitive, connected person. And then I wasn't allowed to always be in the 80s. We didn't know what we know now. I wasn't always allowed to be the highly sensitive person, or I wasn't allowed to be, what was the term Brene Brown uses? It's, I can't remember. High needs or high, it wasn't high needs. It was like, you just needed, they needed too much energy or change, right? You had to fit in the box. You had to be quiet. You had to be a good human. You weren't allowed to be yourself, basically. And so you're putting these layers of onions, like onion layers of protection upon yourself. So then when you get to adulthood, you're not connected. You can't hear your heart. You go through something major like becoming a parent, and you're trying so hard to read the books, follow the rules, get on the schedules, listen to the AAP, trying to do all of these things that you think you're supposed to be, and you can't hear your heart because you have so many of those layers.
The brain is way too active. That's why. So that becomes the differentiating point. If the brain, the human consciousness, because we got the two consciousnesses, we have who we really are, which is eternal, and then we have the human consciousness, which started at birth. And this thing goes all over the place, right? That's what we're trying to reel in sometimes. And we can tell how far away it is from this perspective by how we feel. That's what the emotional scale is. And so it's about bringing our conscious focus based on how it feels back into the same place. And then now there's no resistance. You're not off the radio dial. You're right on the station and the signal is clear.
Okay, I have a personal question. I want to know for myself. Once you're connected, my mom and I like to live in this, we're out here. We're not in our bodies. I'm guessing we probably need to ground ourselves in our bodies because we're just going through. I'm forgetting, I needed to go to the grocery store today. I was supposed to go to such and such appointment because I love to be connected all the time. Where is that balance? What do we need to do?
No, that's a brilliant question. Probably one of the best questions ever asked. Where is the balance point? And it moves, right? But But the way I've come to see it is that we came into a physical body and a physical experience to have a physical experience in the body, but while still connected. So it's the integration of both, and and the needle is always moving because our brain is constantly chattering and changing. And so you got to find the balance point yourself, and you won't keep it. People say, how do I find alignment and then stay in alignment? I say, it ain't going to happen because that wasn't the point of being here. You're here to have the variety and to go through the downside so that you can figure out what feels better and come back into alignment. And in doing so, you're more empowered. You're more clear about what works for you. You have a better idea of what to do next. You then open the door for new things to come in. So you could simply, grounding is kind of a generic word, but whatever that grounding means to you. For instance, for me, I was, before this call, after lunch, I went out in the backyard. This is a gorgeous day in the mid-60s here, and still cool. So I just put on some like sweats, but I took my shoes off and just sat with my feet in the ground, literally in the physical ground, for about a half hour. And that's one way that really brings my attention down, not only into my body, but right down into the earth. And that feels really good to me. And that alleviates a lot of that. But you can do things that are sensual. You can do things that are touch, things that are breathing, flavors and textures and tastes, anything that engages the five senses in the body while remaining connected. So if you can find that state, Carrie, the two, where you're sensory in the body and yet open to the guidance which is coming through, then you're going to have the best of all worlds in those moments. And when you're not there, so you figure out how to get back.
Yes, that's great.
Does that help at all?
That totally helps. My son, when he was 2, he used to go around and hug trees all the time. And I've heard touching a tree is another way to ground.
I've done that, yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I have to ask you a little bit about telepathy. So I've always been more recently an intuitive now. And is this an example of telepathy? I have to ask you. If I hear something from spirit or from like my grandmother, if I'm in the shower and I'm washing my hair and I hear something and I know it's her, is that a version or is that something different?
Yeah. So once again, the human needs labels to discern.
It does.
And those damn spiritual
Categories.
people, yeah, they don't have labels. They don't have names on the other side of the veil because they know each other by energy. And so beautiful. The names are for us, and labels are fine. It helps us to create platforms to understand. But then once we understand, then get into knowing, then we don't need the labels anymore. So it's whatever works for you. The way I look at it, just again, my computer brain wants to really boil things down. I think about this stuff every day and find ways to simplify the explanation so that people can grab onto it and start proving it to themselves. Because I don't want you to listen to my words for proof. You got to go do it yourself. But that being said, there's the ocean of all consciousness, which we're all streams off of. We're all different perspectives, having different journeys, but never disconnected from the ocean. And that cannot be defined in three-dimensional terms. It's it's multidimensional in nature. And the human brain simply can't really understand that. We can feel it when we connect to it, but we can't understand it. So I like to think that the brain is usually pretty active, and so we're kind of down here in third-dimensional reality. But if we can, when we soften that, then our frequency raises and we get back up into that cloud of consciousness. Everything is in that cloud of consciousness, non-physical consciousness, everything. Your past grandmother, her consciousness is there. Everybody you've ever known is there. Source energy, kind of the core of all of it, is there. The angelic realm, the fairies, the people in the Pleiadian star system. Everyone has a component that's in this cloud, and the only thing that separates the cloud, because everything is here and now, is frequency. It's a choice of where we focus our radio station. So if you're tuned, people who are tuned to somebody who they loved here in the physical, then you know what their vibration feels like. And so when you allow yourself to get up to where the radio is, letting go of the fears and floating out through grounding or whatever, now it's just you just set your focus. Oh, there's grandma. Okay, I feel grandma's energy. Open up to grandma's energy. Don't let the brain say, "Ooh, is that really grandma? Ooh, should I be doing this?" There are a lot of people who have the old dogmatic religions. It's like, "Oh, but what about evil spirits? What if I connect? How do I know it's my?" Well, you can feel, right? If you're up in this range, evil doesn't live in the non-physical range. It's created down here in what they call thought forms. It's kind of like a stepping between. Humans, everything is created. Yeah, evil stuff, quote unquote, does live around us and spiritually and physically, but you will never experience it unless you're tuned to it. So yes, grandma is one channel. I love connecting through people and myself sometimes through collective consciousnesses that are really vibrationally very familiar. The energy of Jesus, the Yeshua collective consciousness, as it was Jesus, is strong. And that's who I invite in before my calls. And I feel them flood into my body. And then I co-create with them. And that gives me that guidance. Telepathy is just a subset of that, where you're picking a person or a collective of people who are on the same frequency to open up a channel to. And then the thoughts are the same. You're sharing thought. You're not creating the thoughts. The thoughts exist. You're tuning to the thoughts, and then you share thoughts in the non-physical realm. That's essentially, to me, what telepathy is. So the work I do in the Exploring Telepathy calls, and as private clients as well, is about just chilling out and how do we get up into that range. And then channeling and connecting is a lot easier when you can do that part. So I do this part mostly.
Okay.
Get them up there.
Who knows if they stay up there? They'll come. But you're teaching them how, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I help, and I help them through guided meditations and so forth. But the thing is that once you've tasted that, like once somebody wants to truly get into a full-blown channeling state, there's this immense flood of love which goes through the body, which brings people to tears sometimes. Some people call it a Kundalini awakening. To me, it's just opening up wide enough that flood comes through. And once you've tasted that near-death experience, same thing. Once you've tasted that, the purity of that immensity of love, then you want to get back there. And so you kind of become self-driven to find your way back.
Oh man, do you? I've been learning, I've been studying so many things. I'm in a ministry for metaphysics course right now. And once you open that door, it's very ongoing. So
yeah, why wouldn't you want to feel good?
Yeah, it's so amazing to find those pieces. And it's interesting, the channeling that I started, the channel writing that I started, it's definitely intensified as it's gone through it. Now I cannot write fast enough. I cannot type. I started trying to type. I moved to typing. That cannot go fast enough. Now sometimes I just read it into my phone because it comes so fast.
Yeah. Well, that was the same thing. I did automatic writing for a while, but it would start to turn into a blur. I could, my hand was just going across the page. Yeah. And I was guided in some time ago they said, your job is to speak it. And this is why I haven't really written books. I've got lots of material I've done in the past, but it's all old in the now moment. And I don't want to go back and I don't want to write a book because I'm going to be going backwards. I just want to do this, what we're doing here. I want to do that in a workshop. I want to do that with a client where I'm in the present moment and bringing through what wants to come through me to whoever's calling for it. And I won't put up with less.
Yes, I agree. Yes, that's how the podcast ended up starting was
I can feel
how
it.
do we get this? How do we get this out to people?
Yeah, your energy is very bright. That's one of the things I immediately knew when we connected. Yeah, some people have just like a sun behind their head, and you kind of have that.
Oh, interesting.
Bright,
thank you so much.
Energy.
It could be my grandma. No, it's me. Okay. Yes. She was, my grandmother that I connect with, she was a special educator. For 32 years she taught, and she worked with a lot of kids that she would say they were in their bodies. And people would say, I can't help them. Other teachers would say, I can't help them. I don't know what to do with them. Send them to Yolanda. And she would get in there, and she was a healer, and she would say, I know you're in there, I know you're in there, and you can hear me, and I see your energy. I see your soul. So she was way beyond. That was in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Yeah, beyond her time.
So she was, one of the true leading edge that you were talking about earlier. How wonderful you had that as an example. Sort of shining a light in a direction that might be fun. And clearly you've taken the baton and are running with it.
That's what I'm hearing. Yes, of course. And it's really fun. I think one of the things that I love that's coming about this evolution of humanity right now, this evolution of ideas, and I don't know what to call it even, it's so cool, is just understanding, finding these strengths in our kids and empowering them for our kids. So like I've said in the past, my kids have labels. We don't use them. We do for medical pieces that we have to here and there, but we are empowering. So I talk to my kids about, yes, sometimes we're extra sensitive to light and noises, and oh my gosh, it's a superpower. You can see, you can pick up somebody else's feelings. And we talk about energy and protection and protecting our energy from others, because yes, we can take that home with us without realizing it. And so having those conversations, I had that conversation with my 6-year-old. She didn't realize she was picking up the energy from a friend that was going through some things and would drop it on my daughter. And so I taught her, if you start to suddenly feel their sadness, and so we did a gold and white light of protection and said, no negative energy. This is not my energy. It's not allowed in right now. And she said she felt better. And so I'm trying to help parents understand, like, we can have these conversations with our kids. If we have those right now, when they're 6 years, 7 years, 10 years old, can you imagine what's to come in the next era?
Yes, exactly. You're giving them permission to be themselves, essentially, what they're guided to internally, but they've learned to take on some of the external, as you said, the energy. Yeah, and you're just reminding them of who they are and that it's okay to be who they are. Yeah, if every parent could do that, it would be magic.
It would be magic. And I think also you had mentioned having these pieces that we come back to for ourselves as parents too, because it can be so challenging raising these kids in the world that is not necessarily prepared to receive them yet. Finding the times to be proactive as a parent, speaking up, changing their schools, which I did for my son and my daughter. We found a social emotional focus school, and they've just blossomed in it. It's what they needed. And so having that energy as a parent, and it can be hard to keep going every day. And so having those pieces for ourselves that we can come back to is really important.
Well, as you say, that's the sort of the centering. And one of the things that I find, even in the telepathy tapes, which is one of the most positive things I've ever heard in my life, it so resonated, there's still a small element of, I've got to prove this. I've just got to get people to believe.
Brain.
Right. And well, I was that way for many years. I had to prove myself to my parents and all that stuff. But the thing is that the emotional scale doesn't lie, right? Whatever you're feeling, as you just said for your kids, which was beautiful, that's also what you're sending out and what will be reflected back. And so if you want them to be more effective, and there's nothing wrong with anyone being anywhere doing anything. Everybody's on their journey of expansion and learning, and it's all perfect. And if you want to take it to an even more refined state, then let go of that piece. Just do the thing that you're being guided to do, and you won't get detractors, because detractors only come when you're at a low vibrational state. You will attract supporters the more you're in a supportive state. So this is just fine-tuning what you're already doing and what whoever's on this journey. And if I could sit down with Kai Dickens for 5 minutes, I would say that's the one little thing that if you want to take this to the next level, it would be just stop trying to prove things to other people and just do it, because it's a real thing. And suddenly people say, well, wait a second, all our kids are behind. Why are your kids so far ahead? Why are they so happy? Why are they manifesting? Yes, it's because we didn't focus on what wasn't working and improving ourselves, because nobody's going to get you anyway. And the reality is that nobody can get another person 100%. It's just not possible, because everyone is unique unto the universe. So we let that go and just focus more, get into the joy, the expansion, follow the breadcrumbs. And the more we do that, then the faster it moves. But again, there's no wrong way. You're learning either way.
Yeah.
Have fun.
I feel like she maybe felt like she had to be the bridge, because even my husband, who's an engineer, he's addicted to telepathy tapes right now, and he's more of the science space, and he's listening. He's like, Carrie, she's saying what you've been saying. She's saying this. She's now hearing, these children, the gifts. She's talking about it, them being so connected. Like, wow. And how did you know? I'm like, well, if you didn't believe what I was saying before, I'm glad you now believe it, because you're seeing it from somebody else. Yes, the science base was proven. So I do understand that piece. And the people that are ready to receive it will, even without all the backup.
Totally. And I totally believe that wherever somebody's at, and if they're doing their passion, there are people, the passion comes from the calling of the people that they're going to affect. This is something that really changed my life when I realized my role as I call myself a conscious channel. Trance channel or one who go into a trance like Esther Hicks. Conscious channel, I open up, and this is what you do, a lot of us do. When we are wherever we're at, we get an excitement, something we want to move forward with, particularly helping other people. We're sort of we're the channel. Source energy sees where we're at, is always sending us guidance through those impulses, positive impulses, intuition. It's always there, just like every radio station is there, but usually we're not listening, right? But then when we get into that state we were talking about, we're now starting to feel the calling of the people who are ready to receive that information but can't get it on their own. We're the channel. We're feeling that energy through our bodies of the people who are ready to receive us where we're at now, not in a year when we get a certificate, not in 5 years when we've done. Now, if you're feeling it now, they're there now. And so I tell this to people who want to go into business doing these various kinds of spiritual healing work. You don't need more experience. You don't need, if you're feeling the calling now, do it now, because there's no wrong way to go. Clearly felt her calling. I mean, it radiates all through her, and she's connecting with the people who she's ready to help, who are her highest excitement. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I couldn't do what she does, but I can see that if and when she wants to go to an even other level, if she doesn't find it herself, which she probably will, then letting go of the proof side for her audience, which will come with her to that not needing the proof side, will then rendezvous at that point. So there's no wrong place to be for anybody.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be here talking with you if it weren't for her. So I have the deepest appreciation for Kai Dickens and all the work that she's done.
Yep. Yeah, I love, she's bridging those pieces for so many people.
Well, let her be out on the front lines. I like being here.
Me too. Yes, it was so beautiful, because when I first started the podcast, I have the evidence-based theory practice background, and I didn't put spirituality out there at first. It was like mindful, conscious, using these keywords that weren't really out there. And my neck and everything, my body physically locked up until I wrote spiritual on my website, and then everything released.
Wow. That is so cool. So you really came into integrity, into alignment with yourself, by allowing yourself to put that word out there. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I had the same when I learned law of attraction 15 years ago, 18, whenever that was, 17 years ago. I wouldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Like, this makes sense to me, and I'm starting to do it. I'm starting to prove to myself that I do attract what I focus on. And we started holding workshops in our living room for just a small group of people. And, it expanded, but I didn't even put it on my Facebook page, for many years. And then suddenly there was that, like, well, what am I afraid of? The mafia aren't going to come in the door, and the intellectual mafia or whatever,
Science-based mafia.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't, because unless I was in fear. And I realized I've got to let go of my fear of this so that I don't attract what I don't want. What I'm afraid that might happen, I will manifest if I continue down that path. And so then the journey since then has been just what you're inspired to put out. And very seldom do I have anybody who doesn't totally resonate with it. Once in a while I do. If I'm having a bad day, somebody will jump in and just be all over my crap and right in my face about it. And then that means that I've got something I've got to heal. And so I pull away and I let it go, and then I get back to the broader perspective.
Beautifully put. So Kevin, I was going to ask you if you could tell, as we conclude, if you could tell our listeners that are raising kids today, what's one thing you would like to leave parents with today?
I'd say notice the reflection that they're giving you to you. If, as we've been talking about, if they are acting up and you're feeling stressed about it, then it may not be originally because of you. They might have been stressed of something else. But if you're experiencing that stress, then you've got stress going on, and they're reflecting it back to you. So do whatever works for you. Like we were talking about, there's a million things you can do to find peace, get away from the energy, come back into alignment. And magic happens when you do that.
Well, I will include that Facebook group we were talking about in our show notes. Thanks so much for being here today.
Totally my pleasure, Carrie. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in, Changemakers. This is Carrie. And if you haven't done a review for us, 5 stars and a few words about what you've enjoyed in our podcast episodes, we would really appreciate it. If you guys would like to ever message me, I would love any questions you have or any feedback at info@hearttoheartlife.com. We also have a brand new website, which we're super excited to share. It's hearttoheartlife.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and happy life, happy times, Changemaker families. Bye. Please remember that the information shared on this podcast is educational in nature and does not constitute licensed mental health advice. If you need such advice, you should speak with a licensed professional about your unique situation. Thanks so much, happy listeners.